You do. This week, I'm having a conversation with Alex Crampton. Alex is an artist, a celebrant, an illustrator, a visual storyteller. But most of all, she focuses on creative self-expression. As always, we cover a wide and varied number of topics, from religion to the collapse of capitalism, and how to remain composed under pressure and the importance of it. The main thing that I took away from this conversation, however, is when not to listen to those voices inside. Sometimes they can be there for good, sometimes not. And sometimes, just sometimes, when you're really onto something, a new project, a new idea, and they're shouting at you really loudly that it's not going to work, that's the best time to push on through, because you might just be onto something. Hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. And if you do, please like, share, subscribe. It really, really helps. Thanks a lot. Should give us a notification.
Okay. Cool.
Wonderful. So, Alex, welcome. Thank you for being a first guest on What Do You Do? As I said to you, we've got kind of a list of questions, but I'm happy to go wherever the chat takes us, really. So, as the show is called What Do You Do? My first question for you is, Alex, what do you do?
What do I do? Great. Well, I do a number of things, but the overarching response is I'm an artist.
Yep.
And so I started off being a theatre director. So I do creative self-expression workshops. So I help coach people of all ages in how to just, express themselves in a really truthful, inspired way, stretch their imaginations, rely on their intuitive voice. So I help coach people through their creativity, using the body and stories. Mm-hmm. I'm also a ceremonial celebrant. So I'm trained with humanists. I do weddings, love ceremonies, death ceremonies, and other things in between, but looking at how we can use the art of ritual to deepen meaning in life, and how that looks like if you construct that into a ceremony. But there's usually a storytelling aspect in that ceremony as well. And echoes theatre a bit in that collective transcendental experience to transform something. And then the thing I've gotten into since lockdown that is probably closest to my heart is visual storytelling and illustration. So under illustration, because I'm fairly fresh at it, I've been going with the business now for 4 years, do sign writing, sculptures, commission, book illustrations, a whole bunch of stuff. And within that, I've got passion projects, but mainly, communicating ideas and telling stories through drawings and illustration.
Nice. Okay. I'm going to go off on a tangent straight away, just because one of the bits that you said I found really interesting, and that was the celebrant stuff. So shared ritual and creating meaning through story, because I think I'm not religious at all, because I think it's too dogmatic and for a whole host of reasons. But I like the idea of the community that it brings, and that shared vision and the story. If anything, I guess I'll describe myself as stoic more than anything else. And I guess the more that I've learned about stoicism, the more I see echoes of it through a lot of different religions. But is what you're doing with the celebrancy.
Yeah.
That's it. Thank you. I was my brain, it had celibacy, and I was like, that's a whole different thing. Celibacy. Thank you. Are you finding that's getting more popular? Do you think there's any link with that and the whole religious piece?
I think what's interesting is there's a lot of people who aren't religious. They're not members of a structured, institutionalized spiritual group, but they are yearning for, and they may be more scientifically minded, based in logic. Spiritualism might be a bit of a dirty word. I think yeah, but they still, we're humans, and I think we seek patterns, and we seek stories, and we just inherently look for the meaning in things.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot about I mean, rituals are things you do repeatedly, and I think there's a lot about the rituals of late stage capitalism that are leaving a lot of people unfulfilled, anxious and depressed, and they're looking for something else. So I'm interested in, through all lines of my work, really helping people cultivate their own sense of ritual and find what's meaningful for them that lies outside of the cultural storyline of what we're meant to value and what's meant to be important. Because a lot of that is trying to extract money from us and keep us working.
Yeah. Yeah. I've got, so the article that you shared with me on Facebook, I read it earlier and I've got some notes around that. Didn't think we'd get into it this early, but I'm glad that we and I'm not surprised either. But one of the other things I want to dive in on is the late stage capitalism. Kind of implies that it's coming towards its end, maybe? Or is that just kind of wishful thinking?
Well, and here I'm not heavily brushed up on capitalist theory and what the different, like, what does that then look like? But it's something that will eat itself up, right? That's what Karl Marx talks about. It will eat itself up, and you can't keep on expanding forever. And what I feel to be true is that we're already seeing that implosion, because we live in a world with finite resources. But this idea that we can keep on growing and consuming, and that doesn't work. So it's got to end. And it's already combusting, and there's a lot of fallout from it in terms of what we're witnessing in the weather and with economies and with migrations and all of the political tension with that. So without getting too knotty in all of that, I think it is ending. I mean, it blows my mind, really, the concept of money, and that money is just computers really punched into a screen, and it's not linked to anything tangible or real anymore.
Yeah.
So
once you have that many people sharing a system they absolutely don't understand, then that's not going to lead anywhere good at all, is it? And I think what you were kind of pointing towards there a lot was the chaos of life at the moment. And I think whenever we have a lot of chaos in life, we seek rituals, right? Because you want something that's then predictable and repeatable, just as a balance to that.
It was really interesting. I watched a talk. There's a festival here that I work on called the Other Voices Festival. Really interesting if your followers want to look that up. And it came to Cardigan, and the opening talk with the Clebran sessions, and Clebran means like chit chat in Welsh, were two druids who would talk to women who were, which is really like Druidism being quite an animist spiritual belief, and you could say it's a religion, but this idea that love is the unifying thing that you find across all religions and all spiritual systems. And they asked that same question to them, like, are you noticing like an increase of people coming to you for spiritual guidance? And they said that, this kind of accelerated time that we're living in, that it does feel really chaotic. And I think it does feel that there's a lot more stress and anxiety and war and conflict. It's everything's very intense at the minute, that people are looking for solace and some sense within it all. And part of it, I think, is an uncomfortableness, a discomfort with endings, and a discomfort with not knowing what's going to happen next. And I play women's football, and me and my partner were watching them on Sunday, and he's like, what you want is composure under pressure. It's like that idea of how can we all find our composure under the intense stress of not knowing what's coming next. And I think the culture we're in a Western global North capitalist culture is very uncomfortable with endings and stillness and rest, because none of that's productive. So, you know, like a lot of us, busy. It's really good to be busy and not pause long enough to really think deeply about anything.
Yeah. I'm definitely guilty of that. Not resting, not stopping, not taking pause, really, I think, because I don't know, it opens up to too much reflection. You might not know, you might not like the answers, perhaps. But that's me getting too deep into myself. So
Totally agree. I think when I moved to Wales because I had to. It was part of like a nervous breakdown from living in London and theatre directing. Yeah, and I moved to Wales, and that first winter, it can be very wet and cold and dark and hard in the very west of Wales where I live. Amazing, which is why I'm still here and I love it. But winters can be really difficult. And I think the thing that was really confronting in that first winter was just my own being bored with myself and terrified of my own company, really. Like there's a lack of self-intimacy. It's just too noisy to be infinite with yourself a lot of the time, especially if you've got a family, if you've got other, a lot of demands on you.
Yeah, I often joke with my wife when my daughter says I'm bored. I'm like, God, I don't remember the last time I was bored. I'd love to be bored. But honestly, I don't think I would, because I can't do anything without a podcast or music or some sort of noise from the outside to distract me. I think there's probably a lot of other people that feel that way, actually. So it gives us a nice circle back, actually, to my original list of questions. And you mentioned theatre directing in London. So who were you before you became who you are now?
Oh, interesting. Who was I? I was Alex Crampton, freelance theatre director who did very well at school, went to a comprehensive school, did well, wanted to be a theatre director, loved films, maybe I'll be a film director, then graduated, got on with it, did it, spent a lot of time in London not earning, like really ropey in like being kind of skint all the time, but clawing my way into that dream. And for about 5 to 8, how long was it actually in the end? I think for 8 years I was working on that theatre directing dream. And by the time I got to a place where I was being offered to direct shows at pretty big off West End theatres with some great credits under my belt and funding and all the rest of it, I was so neurotically torched. Like I just couldn't, I was just having emotional breakdowns all over the place. I had face rash. I'd done as much as I could. And I think it's interesting that I'd really expanded the part of myself that was about civilization and the civilized arts and debate and all of that kind of thinking. And what was starved was this connection to nature and like who I was in a more physical, I was so cerebral. I was just up in my head, my body. And, like I know in your previous life, very, very attuned to the body. My body was just giving me all these kinds of warning signs that I had an eye infection, like my face, it was putting it in a place that I could not ignore. And so, I was and I grew up in a family where intellectual accomplishment was championed and valued. I got a first-class degree and I went off to a good university and all of that. But I just couldn't get on with desk jobs. Number one, it became really obvious that I had to do something. Like I just got sick and depressed if I was at a desk for too long, and I had to do something creative. So I was just passionate about theatre, and I thought it was going to change the world, and we were going to come together and reevaluate all of society's problems. And then I think the further up the ladder I got, I felt like it was just a real echo chamber, and it was so concentrated in the London area, and this wasn't a wide popular art form, and it wasn't going to have the sort of appeal that I thought it might have, and it wasn't the solution, coupled with a nervous breakdown. So I then didn't know what to do, and a friend had just come back from, he was living in the Philippines doing some mad life with like Airbnb something like kind of illegally, and just getting away with this interesting life as a cage fighter turned yoga teacher in the Philippines. And he's like, why don't you just like get out of all of this? And then it's that light bulb moment of like, I just felt so trapped into that lifestyle.
Yeah.
Or solutions present. I found solutions when I actually needed to. And then found myself on a remote island in Sumatra in Indonesia, living above some pigs, the only white person in this huge island. And that was a year of discovering that I really do well. My whole nervous system does well when I'm in a very wild vegetative space, and learning new things is amazing. And wanting to have, went on a huge venture when I was 32, and it felt like I should be somewhere else doing a certain sort of thing and earning a certain sort of pay bracket.
Was there a moment that you can kind of think back on and go, that was it, that was kind of the straw that broke the donkey's back, or that was my enough is enough moment?
Yeah. Okay. Well, is it too much information? I feel like it's relevant somehow. I can track. So this was at the time of face rashes, eye styes, and I broke down in tears. I was working as an educational practitioner with Donmar Warehouse in London, and we had a meeting, and I just started crying. Like, I just couldn't hold it together. So I was having these breakdowns, and then I contracted herpes, and that was absolutely the cherry on the cake of it was quite a difficult physical experience, that first outbreak. But what's interesting about it is herpes for me, not many people have it recurrently, and I do, that it flares up when you're stressed, really, mainly. So at this point of like acute life stress, something came into my life that was like, you have got to monitor your health and your stress levels, otherwise this will come up. And it also flagged for me that I had been prioritizing my career and my money and my independence and all of that life above my domestic life, my intimate relation. All of that just got chucked on the back burner. Yeah.
So was it, because it sounds to me, from what I know of you, the mission you had in the theatre isn't that different from the mission that you still have now, but was it that was the wrong output for it? Was it the fact that there wasn't the balance that you needed in your life that stopped you from being able to achieve it? Was it a combination?
Yeah, bang on, Ian. I think it's a combination. I think it's totally, it's interesting, isn't it? Because you're like, oh, none of that was wasted. I'm still basically banging the same drum, aren't I? I'm just doing it
in a different way.
I'm just doing it out, and getting to know myself as a so I'm on a diagnosis waiting list, but feedback I've got from some various professionals have suggested that I'm on the neurospicy end, towards the ADHD end of the spectrum. And I realized, and I don't know, I think wherever you are, I think people are on a big spectrum, we're becoming a bit more accepting of that and aware of that. But that doing a certain sort of job and sitting at a desk and just doing one thing, I think whatever your neuro identity is, or your neuro makeup is, and COVID and hybrid working, and that we're not always, so much has changed now. We're a lot more agile. There's I'm so many different things. So I think the variation of what I'm doing can sometimes be self-sabotaging and sometimes can be really nourishing. But I think what's exciting me about the illustrating is I feel like it's, well, with all those things, that portfolio of things, I've got in-person stuff, I've got small scale, big groups, I've got things I can just get on with on my own. And someone said to me once, like, or I think a few entrepreneurs have said that resilience is in diversity. You know, so many million, whatever successful, wealthy people, if we're judging that as a measure of success, will have multiple streams of income. So I diversified my income. All of it's most of it's creative. And then I do food growing and gardening because that helps me. I can't actually do the creative passion stuff all the time. I need to be like a monkey. Yeah, sometimes. Yeah. And to get into my body and to get to that wild nature. So that's where the balance that you mentioned come into it. I need that composition of things, but it still remains difficult to deprogram and allow myself, like, let's say I do computer sit down work for 4 hours a day and then I'm outside, or I only do computer desk work for 3 days, or I have like 4 days off. It still feels like I'm skiving, or like, how dare I have like that much leisure time. It still should be sort of 9 to 5 or more.
Yeah, really interesting, isn't it? The article that you shared with me, I think, speaks to that really, really nicely. And that was Amy McNeid, wasn't it? I don't want a job, I want to make art. She talks about it being meaningful and purposeful and work that is chosen by me. I think that meaningful part. So a lot of the people to be speaking to during the course of the podcast are going to be those people who got to that point and said, enough is enough. I need to do something different. And I want to do something myself. I think there's almost a expectation now that you need to go out and do your own thing. You need to start up your own business. That's the way to be happy. Everyone needs to be an entrepreneur. But I think as long as you feel part of something meaningful and purposeful, that doesn't necessarily have to be your thing alone. It can be a shared vision across an organization. But I think where a lot of organizations are lacking is that they don't have that. They don't have this meaning and this purpose within them. Their meaning and purpose is to make shareholders happy. It's to generate income. I think that's where a lot of people are falling down and why people are moving away from organizations and the 9 to 5 work.
Yeah, I'd agree. Yeah. And then I'm curious as to how big, even if, like, let's say you work for somewhere like Google, who has got one of the best, I think, strapline goals, which is just to make all the world's information accessible at a click, like huge knowledge accessible to everyone. It's really progressive, and what a wonderful philosophy. But once you get to a certain size, like, where does that get diluted? And working in a team, it can be so lonely doing the entrepreneur thing. And I'm actually in a shared office here with other creative freelancers, because that working alongside someone is so important. And I think that's the thing that really kicked me in the end with theatre. Like, I always had a cast and a crew, but you felt very much on your own a lot of the time. And I agree.
At the top. It's lonely at the top, right?
Tough at the top, exactly. But to be part of, I think, actually community and different sort of structures and organisations, and a really strong sense. Even out here, actually, West Wales, there's a lot of intentional communities. And I'm interested in where those started from the 70s with the whole John Seymour, Back to the Land, what's it called? The Good Life was inspired by the movement. So that kind of kicked off in this area of Wales that I'm in. So we've had various waves of Back to the Land hippies, a lot of communities that have fallen down. And I asked an existing one, the inhabitants are now in their late 60s, like, what was the thing? And they're like, when conflict comes, and conflict will always come, trouble always comes, you've got to have that true north guiding star point where you all converge, like, what are you all here for and what's it about? And that pulls you through.
And the purpose needs to be bigger than any one individual person. Definitely. Okay, back from the tangent.
I live for tangents, Ian. It's great.
Should have called this podcast Tangent. So when you were back in the theatre, what would you say was the main thing that was kind of standing in your way, and how did you overcome it?
Oh man. Oh, if I'd have just stopped and actually thought about what I was doing, I'd have gone, fuck this, no way. So much hard work. And what was the main thing standing in my way? I'd say I met the most incredible people and really talented people working in the theatre who were really driven, really socially minded. I think it's a very resource heavy art form where you have to pay humans to show up day after day and perform, and it costs a lot. So it's an expensive form of entertainment. Although when I compare it to friends who work in graphic design, and I work with a photography retoucher, the amount of money that's spent on ad campaigns and touch-ups, and then they might can the campaign. I mean, it's just
Wow.
insane amounts of money. But you look at what something can generate, I guess. So,
Yes.
and when I entered the theatre, I graduated in 2006. It was just before the huge recession, and arts funding was just slashed and has been slashed ever since. So it just felt like it was such a full-time job to get the money in the first place. So much of it was concentrated around London. I came across the term cultural obesity in something that I read, and that just really reflected my late stage capitalism, like my late stage theatre career just before I imploded, which was that I was too broke, too knackered to even really engage with anything. I was just going out to watch shows, and it was like I was a bit of a glutton. Whereas out here in West Wales, something like the Other Voices Festival comes in with like top class musicians and performers, and it's so special because there's not much, there's loads of talent around here, but do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So and then you come to per head, what's the consumption in London, in that London area? Everyone's paying taxes, and then how much is on offer in the London area? And it's massively imbalanced to what's available outside of London. So I think the social inequality of that felt really grotesque by the end, coupled with that I'm really killing myself. And I was living in flats with no doors. We didn't have a toilet door for 16 months. It was above a chicken shop. It was a guardianship place. I lived in some dives because that was the only way I could do the theatre thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's insane. As someone who was successful in that role and in that industry as well.
Well, the artistic director, I don't know if he's still the artistic director. I got so overburnt with theatre, I'm like, I don't want to know. But Rufus Norris used to be the artistic director of the National Theatre, and he was 40 before he earned more than 10,000 a year.
Wow.
So this is why it's a bit of like a rich kid's game.
Yes. Mm.
And that's why. So really the money.
Yeah. Yeah. Was there anyone in particular? Because I know that you mentioned a friend who showed you there was another way, but was there anyone in particular that you lent on that really helped you? Was it that person? Was there anyone else?
Interesting. The person that suggested I get out of it is the person I contracted herpes from. So he's like my herald angel into
The
this.
gift that keeps on giving.
God. Who else? Yeah, I mean, everyone I met so many different people on that year away. The first place I went to was a Lake Toba, and I just met so many people who thought differently. And I remember a local, he's like a pop star in the Batak community, and that was interesting. And so after 3 weeks of getting there, and I was just crying and crying and crying like every day, absolute wreck of a person. And after 3 weeks, it's like I needed 3 weeks to get all my tears out. Yeah. And then I just started drawing. Yeah. I just started drawing. I had a big sketchbook, and I'm just illustrating, not even thinking about it. And after a while, this guy looks at my illustrations and he's like, if you did one of these every day, where do you think you'd be? And like, they're really good. And he reminded me that he's like, you've got this passport and your life, you can do whatever you want. And I did look at like his wife and a lot of the women there, they're never getting out of the house. They're never escaping that you know, I've got so much opportunity. So I think, yeah, feeling a little bit poor and hard up when I broke down in the theatre life, and then going somewhere where I realise I am rich, so rich straight up in comparison to so many people in the world, and rich in opportunity and rich through my education and all of that privilege. I'm very privileged. So feeling that, and it was absolutely going to Bali. I helped with some construction. I learned off this amazing guy in amazing man in Java, up in the Sittagunung National Park, a man called Isep, and you can look up his stuff online. He runs the Bumi Bagja project, which is Happy Earth, and he is like, how can we take people from the city and give them that nature connection? So he has big residentials of Indonesian people coming up from Java, and he builds beautiful buildings out of bamboo, and he looks to old techniques like Batak, natural ink dyeing, and how can we have the heritage of more sustainable craft systems, food systems, clothing systems, and mingle it with modernity and like find new sustainable ways of doing things. So I learned a lot from him because we really clicked, and he's like, yes, make a bamboo entryway into these woods. And I was like, okay. And he just trusted me to do that. And that was great. And then I went to Bali and met a very inspiring woman who has now and now died. She had lung cancer. I didn't know when we got to know each other, but she was supporting refugees from the Fukushima nuclear reactions who had migrated to Bali, who felt like it was a safer place to be in terms of toxicity. And she was providing a cover. She'd married a Balinese man. She was providing a cover for Japanese who were living there to sell. Maybe, I don't know who's going to be listening to this, but yeah, protecting, helping people make a living. And so I was at a point at the end of the whole Indonesia journey. Oh no, the main thing there is that I learned that having my hands on plants and eating vegetables and food straight off the plant was such an incredibly vitalizing sensation to me. You know, I grew up in Bromley. We went to Safeways. I hadn't really seen a plant, you know, and that's when I felt like food growing in a connection with the earth. She said across the world, like growing food is basic for most of the people in the world.
Yeah.
And that kind of like those rhythms. So I think I really got that nature connection when I stayed at that natural farm in Bali. So yeah, those people were hugely influential to me.
What was the biggest hurdle you feel you had to overcome, either personally, professionally, psychologically?
Self-chat.
Yeah.
All that self-chat. And I was saying to a friend of mine was, I can't get going with this thing. I'm like, what I know now is that as soon as the voices inside are going, that shit, I know I'm onto something. And usually when they start kicking off in a big way, like I'm very close to like a breakthrough on something. And if I've been thinking something super shit on Monday, by Wednesday, I'm like, this might be some of the best work I've ever done, actually. Amazing. But it's like this body dysmorphia. You're so dysmorphically looking at it in the moment when it's coming out, and things want to shut it down. And sometimes it's shit, and that's fine. And it's not good, and you've got to do that too. But I'd say, yeah, the belief systems and the mindset.
Yeah. Is that where you find most with when you were talking about running these workshops with people, getting them to get in touch with their own creativity? Is that?
Yep. Well, why we focus on like physical self-expression and a lot of somatic theatre techniques is that you get out of your head and you get into your body and you just stop all of that chatter. Like when you start playing games, you're working on instinct and you're not thinking about things, and yeah, you just don't give any space for those voices to come in. So yeah, and I think when people actually start playing, they really so yeah, I would say that when you're playing as well, you open up, and a lot of the time when those critical inner critic voices come in, we just get locked into ourselves and we contract. So the solution is to just, and I think hacks I've read about, whatever it is you're working on, get up and go for a walk, like move your body, jump up and down, do something else. You want to sort of refresh yourself, so it just breaks the loop.
Yeah, nice. What would you say are your kind of key values and morals, and how do they align with what you're doing now?
Oh, good question. Well, a bit like that Amy McNee article, this feeling like there's got to be another way. There's got to be another way that the systems of the world work. And I feel uncomfortable about systemic change because I've got more work to do on privilege, white privilege, that like I'm coming at it from a bunch of different ways in my life. I'm practicing ethical non-monogamy. That feels like a real break from a system. Living in this.
Sorry, it's not a term I've heard before, ethical non-monogamy.
Oh, right. As in, well, ethical non-monogamy means consensual and everyone knows about it rather than cheating.
Okay, right.
Right. But that can include a bunch of different models and styles, from polyamory to relationship anarchy. And I want to read more along that route, but there's a lot of anti-capitalist thinking with relationship anarchy, which is these inherent structures we've got, like why do we put this one particular person on a pedestal and the most important thing, and they must represent all of this stuff, and what about all the other relationships in our lives, and to not impose any kind of structure anywhere. So it's quite, so this anarchist influence there, so exploring that. I've gone off on a tangent. What was the initial question?
Because I want to dive into this more, because this is interesting, right? So I think that's half of the problem with traditional Western like marriages, couples. You place so much responsibility on the other person. You need to make me happy. And it's just, you need to be my soulmate. You need to be my best friend. You need to be my partner in life. You need to be my co-parent. And it's just too much responsibility to place on one other person.
It's unrealistic, really, isn't it? It's a really high bar. And I just came back from a month living with my sister, who lives in a large house with her husband and my niece, who's 4.5, and like happy, great. But you know, all of us have got our various relationship challenges with ourselves, with other people, and it just did a lot to be. I think my sister just loved having another person in there, just for like a group dynamic, and so did I love being with them. But that's just to be like, this, I think, helping dilute her frustration that her partner needed to be everything. I'm like, you can't allow things to be what they are and allow people to be what they are. And
taking that inward view sometimes. What do I need? Where can I get that from? Rather than necessarily going, you need to give me whatever I need.
Yes.
You know, do I need this spiritual connection on a different level with someone? It could be someone the same gender, it could be someone different gender. It doesn't have to even be sexual. It can just be, I need to connect with somebody else who has got a different energy to me.
Yeah, well, and I've got a really close relationship with a man, a friend, who is, it's totally non-sexual, but it's romantic, I'd say, in that we're very emotionally intimate with each other. And he came across a term platonic partner, and he's the sort of person that is always there, that I turn to in certain situations, that is there for me when I need him, like a lot of what you'd expect a husband to do, but we're like, well, what do we call each other? And a lot of people are like, well, are you together? What's going on? You must have shagged, or you know, they just can't quite understand it. So is the sound, can you hear that sound? Are you all right on the recording?
Good.
Great.
I think it's that community thing again, right? And we've if you're not part of a church, or you're not part of a club, or you're not part of something else, which so many of us aren't because we are so busy, it's you can't find those relationships within your community. So you are isolated to your partner and perhaps your child or your children. Yeah, it's just too much pressure and too much responsibility on it.
And I haven't quite finished it yet, but there's quite a key book that's promoted a lot. One is The Ethical Slut, if people are interested in this sort of thing. And the more recent title is Polysecure. And in that, she talks about a nested model of security, and that it starts within yourself, like how secure are you within yourself? And you can be looking outside, you know, it's this idea that, and like polyamory is the hardest thing I've ever done. So it really isn't a walk in the park, but you know, you're looking at something like a monogamous relationship model to just give you security, but nothing's actually necessarily more secure. You just think that you're relying on this shape to secure it, if that makes sense.
It does, yeah. The other thing that strikes me as well is how little ego needs to play a part in polyamory, but also moving away from that capitalism thing. Because I think a lot of the capitalism is ego driven. It's insecurity. It's look how rich I am. Look at my fancy watch. Look at my big house. Look at my flash car.
Well, with theatre, it's like, am I clever enough? Am I clever enough? Is this smart enough? Will this do? Is this enough? Just, am I enoughness?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and no one will ever be able to answer that question for you, right? You've got to look inside and answer that question for yourself.
Yeah, I think my coach was talking about what age that was formed at. It's either 0 to 2. I think 0 to 2, she said, was like, am I loved? Am I safe? Am I something or other? And then after that, like very early before 7, it's that am I enough? Self-esteem formulation. And I'm 41 and I'm just realizing how damaged I am, how much I need to repair there. But that's what took me down really before. I didn't quite understand it at the time. I couldn't see what was going on. Still working on it.
Yeah, but at least you're aware of it and you're working on it, which is a few steps ahead of a lot of people out there, right?
Oh, well, I think what's cool is that personal development, and I'd like to think of a bit more as healing work, really. I think maybe baby boomers talk about the snowflake generation and navel gazing or woke generation, but I think there's a lot of our contemporaries who are like, right, well, it stops here. I'm going to try and make it stop here, heal this, otherwise it will keep on getting passed on. And I think the very youngest, like the kids, you don't need to say that to them. They know what's up. We're like, let's just get it together so we can like help them as much as possible, do what they need to do.
Absolutely. Being aware of it so you then pass it on. Yeah, 100%. When you were, I'm going to take you back to Bali, wasn't it? Yeah, so I'm going to take you back to Bali. When you were in Bali, what did you have an idea, or what did you think your future was going to look like? Did you have like a grand plan of this is where I'm heading?
Interesting. So I left a year to the day. Now I've got quite a love of Celtic, like pagan, nature-based ritual days, like the equinoxes and the solstices. And so Beltane is the 1st of May, which is when like peak spring, all the verdant green, it's very sexy time, everything's coming out, right? And I landed on the 1st of May 2015 and left on I've made a decision that, right, I'm like been offered to run this miso food business in Bali. I've got Barney's boyfriend, like this whole life was sort of coming up. And I was really happy, so happy, having, you know, come out of this deep cataclysm and depression and whatever. And I thought, right, well, but my people are important. I've got to see my family, all my friends back home. It's going to be really hard for me. And it's something with the inequality in the world, to earn enough money to get a flight back, you know, if I'm just going to be here in Bali and do this. So let's go back to the UK, play the game better. I'm like, right, I'm all about the money now. I never used to be about the money. I was all about the art, but now I'm about the money. So I ended up leaving on the 1st of May 2016 on Beltane, and I came back to the UK with the plan that I loved that year away so much, and it did so much for me. I wanted to then come back with actual money that I could use to invest, project management skills. You show up as a volunteer on a bunch of sustainability projects, but to come up and really help project manage, and have a base that was really secure, and I'd be at the base between 6 to 9 months a year, and I go jollying around 3 to 6 months of the year. That was the plan.
Yep.
And almost 8 years later, I am in West Wales, where I'm now recognizing that this is my base. Ended up here by accident again. Someone put a call out, pulled me in, with lots of people who think very differently. It's a perfect little cauldron for alternative thinking. Wanting to, I'm looking, it's funny, you said like you want to interview people where you think their jobs are inspiring or aspirational, and then I've still got that critic voice in the back of my head going, but my cash flow is still really inconsistent. I've got to find a new place to live by May. Work's really quiet at the minute. And I'm like, well, that's not aspirational, is it? Like, I haven't got it sorted out. With
but
those
having the bravery to do that is massively aspirational. It really is.
Oh, thank you. That feels really good. And I am brave, actually. I am brave, and I'm proud of myself with that. But I would also say, like, I had no choice. I fucked myself up so badly. I actually had no choice. I'm like, I've got to do something. And yeah.
Oh, I don't know. There are lots of people out there that are still in the position that you were in, that are still trying to fight through it. So, and there you had choices, and the decisions and the choices that you made as a result of that have brought you where you are, because you could have gone down the traditional route, then to the completely other end of the words, being that you go to the doctors and they give you some happy pills, and you just carry on regardless, and you medicate yourself through life.
Yeah.
And there's no, no judgment on people who are in that place at all. But for you to have not taken that route and gone down a different route and find yourself where you are now, it is. It's amazing.
Thank you. That's nice to hear on the 14th of January, when it feels very January-ish.
Has it kind of turned out the way you planned? And I know that the specifics probably haven't at all, from Bali being the base and now you being in West Wales, but the lifestyle.
That's the cool thing, though, isn't it? Like, it doesn't, like, I could never have predicted the way it went. But like, at this point, I do look back and think, so actually I've got my base. This place has got an incredible sense of community, like, so special, a million miles away from London or Bromley, where I grew up, that was so faceless and anonymous and didn't know your neighbours and whatever. So I now live in this I live a lifestyle that is rich in relationship, on the literal edge of the country. And I think that helps as well when you're actually on the physical edge of things. I'm on the edge of the coast by the sea, and I'm paid to grow food at a really successful, well-run market garden with some really inspiring people here, Cleveland. So I grow food and I get paid to do it.
Nice.
And I am living off my wits and my art and nature connection. So it's happening.
Nice.
Yeah.
Horrible question now. What's been the cost? Because there always is a cost, right? But everything that you achieve, everything that you do.
What are the challenges and costs in my life? I
don't mean kind of financial, but if you can go there if you want to, but I just mean.
It's linked financial. Like, well, I'd say that when you're trying to do something different, and when it's like, right, I just can't work for anyone else. I've got to, although I work for the market garden, I work for someone else. That's some nice relief. But when I'm like, the main thrust of my life is my own creation, and my own creations is the feast and famine nature of my finances. It's exhausting. It's pretty exhausting. A sense of, I do look at a lot of other of my friends who at this point, they've got kids, they've got a house, they're earning a certain pay bracket, and I feel a bit less than when I look at their lives. Or now, being 41, I'm really looking at, right, well, my base, I want to invest in I want to be living in a communal setup. I've got nothing to put into that. I don't have any assets. So all of my, so I'd say that the huge changes and starting again and moving and all of that upheaval has had a financial cost in that I haven't stuck in something and accumulated. But like the kind of resilience and the agility and the skill set, that's what the benefit is. But yeah, the cost is assets. And also, I think we started, I don't know if you pressed record yet, but when you were talking about like, what is it that I do? Or it's interesting to me about how it looks on the outside, because I don't know how cohesive or it can feel so chaotic within my existence. But I've come to know, and this is a bit about the neurospicy thing and a bit about just being a creative thing, creatively minded. And I think the two things go together as well, is that you're like, this is just the chaos bit. Like a pattern will emerge and you've just got to ride out the like, which happens. But I sometimes think like, yeah. So I think the stress of that chaos can be tiring as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
lack of peace of mind, but then great satisfaction and peace in other ways. So
Yeah. And there's a balance. There's a balance. All right.
There's balance. Yeah.
As much as when people say to you, what do? You don't have that job title you can necessarily throw back at people. Half of the time, which is kind of why I wanted to call the podcast this. Half of the time, you meet someone at a party and they say, "What do you do?" and they're not really interested. What they want to do is get a measure of you. You know,
they want to know how much you earn and where do they place you.
Yes.
In the scale.
What pigeonhole are you better than me? Are you superior or inferior to me?
And that was really interesting. And when I first went to Lake Toba, they're like, "Are you married? And do you have children?" Because that's what they value, and that's where they place you. Like my boyfriend in Bali was 36, and most Balinese men are grandfathers at 36. Wow. And he was a bit of an outcast because he didn't have kids and he wasn't married. Like it's all he wanted. Yeah. So yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? We like to think, where are you? I think we're so classist in this country. Like, where are you in the class system? How much are you earning? Yeah.
But I think it's kind of human, but it's our shorthand now, because it would have been, as hunters and gatherers, as apes, are you a threat to me? How much of a threat are you to me? And it's, I guess, in a way, just us quantifying the risk that someone's going to pose on you, depending on what social class they fit into, perhaps.
Yeah, it's a bit of a survivalist hang up, isn't it? So it's understandable. We don't need to like judge or be too hard on ourselves for doing that. But it'd be nice. I remember an Irish friend, he's like, he wants to know, like, who are you? Who are you? That's what I want to know.
Yeah. And for me, it's a great opening question. The problem is with the lack of follow-up. It's, "Hi, how are you? What do you do?" "Oh, that's interesting. Now you ask me." And either I talk about myself for half an hour, or you talk about yourself for half an hour, or it's there's no, a lot of the time there's no real interest. I'm just asking because of the question you ask. I don't really care. So yeah, part of what I wanted to do with this was almost to give people some follow-up questions as well. When you meet someone and say, "What do you do?" find out more about them, learn their story.
Yeah, nice. And thanks for listening to me, and great questions, Ian.
You are very welcome. So where can people find you, Alex, if they want to reach out for your many skills that you have?
Great. Yeah, I've got a website, www.alexcrampton.com. And on there, you'll find a graphic diagram. This is my commitment. I had another friend who was like, "You can't do that. That doesn't make sense, or people will have to work too hard for it." But it's got an interactive graphic on it, and I'll just leave it there. You can find different lines of work I do through interacting with that.
Nice, excellent stuff. That's very creative. I'd expect nothing less. Wonderful. Thanks so much for your time, Alex. It was really great talking to you. Thank you for
Nice
being my
one.
first guest. And as soon as I have published it, I'll be sharing it with you. And yes, thanks
Great.
so much. It was great.
Pleasure. Yeah, really enjoyed it. Thanks, Ian.